Mike took Fireball XL5 and Zero X on more journeys than anyone else, becoming a leading light at TV21. And decades later, Graham Bleatmam started creating breathtaking detailed cutaways, which have illuminated all corners of the Anderson canon like never before. Graham's work beautifully captures the 21st century world seen on screen, adding texture and depth like I've never seen before. Well, it's wonderful to be joined by both of you today. Of course, you're separated by decades, but you both have lots in common. Of course, you both worked with Alan Fennell during the Fleetway years. But if we do begin with Mike, because your contribution to the Anderson world kind of began with the beginning of TV21, I imagine.
Pretty nearly, yes. I wasn't in on the first issue, but I came in about 3 or 4 issues in. I hadn't done any space stories before. I'd been doing illustrations for TV comic, and I was doing cowboys and Indians quite a lot. But I always did rather fancy doing some space stories. I've always been rather mechanically minded, so it rather suited me. They took a chance on me, and I learnt on the job, really.
So this, of course, would be Fireball XL5. That was your first.
Fireball XL5.
Your first Anderson gig, as it were.
Yes.
What was your introduction to the series? Was it being screened at the time?
It was, yes, in black and white. And of course, the artwork they wanted from me was in colour. So I had some difficulty in finding out what the colour of the uniforms were, or what the colour of Fireball XL5 was. And I had to wait, I believe, until the first issue came out. It was 6 weeks, you see, before one's artwork was seen. This was the time the print, thing was set up, and the printer produced the magazine. The person who, I can't remember his name, who was doing Fireball from the beginning, had done it in I believe, a grey colour. But when I saw Fireball on the front cover of TV21, it was a sort of gold colour, and I thought, well, I don't know which is which. So I did it gold, and nobody seemed to criticise it, and it seemed to work all right. Yes.
Absolutely, and it really, really works so well. It's compared to the actual television series, there seems to be a lot more. There's real, as I was saying in the introduction, a real dynamic action to it. So much more movement, and of course you weren't restricted by, what could be achieved on the Slough trading estate. You were.
Yes, I asked Alan whether I should make them look like puppets, because I made the point that since I was illustrating them, I had a great advantage in making them more realistic, and their capability of running and jumping and falling, and it was all very easy, really, to draw. Not so easy to produce with a puppet on a screen. Nevertheless, I think the children's imagination, looking at the wonderful films that were produced at that time, were carried away by the expertise of the people who were doing it, thought it was magnificent. And of course they thought it was realistic, and I feel I carried that fantasy over into the magazine, but whether I achieved that or not, I don't know.
I think a lot of people here would agree that you certainly did. Were you ever invited to the studio in these early stages to kind of get like a handle on the series?
Never to the studio where they were producing the films and that. I'd love to have gone, but one was plunged suddenly into doing a couple of colour pages, and at the time I was still doing the front cover for I think it was the front cover for TV comic with Popeye on the front, and Beetle Bailey inside in black and white, and suddenly having to do Fireball as well. I was working 7 days a week, and I thought I'm never going to survive this. But anyway, as it turned out, I was able to relinquish the Popeye and Beetle Bailey, though I quite enjoyed doing it, I must say. But then I was able to concentrate on Fireball.
It seems to be, because of course TV Century 21 as it began was a weekly title published every Wednesday, and that must have been, because of your work, there is so much stuff going on. It's not kind of monotone, it's not simple art, it's hard working art. They must have got their money's worth out of it, because it's so much detail there. How did you find that, turning that around in a week, 2 panels of art?
Well, as I say, I was quite interested in mechanical things. I wanted to make it as realistic, as I say, and at that time, of course, the Americans were experimenting with rocketry, and NASA was wanting to put space vehicles into orbit. And fortunately, I had an aunt who lived in New Jersey in the USA, and she used to send me Life magazine. I don't know how often it came out, but I think it was fortnightly. And in Life magazine, they had all these wonderful colour photographs from the NASA space project. And for the first time, one got pictures of the Earth from outer space. And one realized that there wasn't a line all the way around the planet, for a start, and that the continents were, for the most part, a sort of monochrome colour, and the whole thing glowed in this beautiful blue. The deserts showed up as a sort of brownish colour, but and naturally enough, I wanted, my first efforts at the Earth in outer space was to do it rather like an atlas would produce the map of Europe and Africa and Asia. But after a while, I was able to make it look more authentic, you see. So there we are. It was a great help. And also to view the Earth, the curve of the Earth, and the cloud formations, and the cyclones, and the circular effect they had. All these things very interested me very much, and I thought, put Fireball out there, or 0X, or one of the other space vehicles, and you've got really an authentic picture. Or I thought that I had anyway.
I certainly did. And you must have had to embellish upon, because I don't think Life and National Geographic magazines, they didn't really feature many alien worlds like you created. Aliens with TV screens in the back of their heads and so forth. I mean, that must have, where did that come from? Did that jump off? Because of course you would have been given scripts for the comic strips.
That's right.
So
yes. Well, I had to dream up some of the aliens. But when you look at the wildlife programs on television, you're hard pressed, because there's a lot in this world and under the sea which looks so weird that you can, although you can't copy the actual look of them, you can get a feel for something rather unusual. So it was quite fun to do these aliens, I must admit, yes. And to dream up their spaceships too. So I was able to do a bit of creating myself.
Of course, I mean, there are many, I actually wanted to ask you about this, but there are many, you did create some kind of like guest vehicles unique to your strips. I mean, some of course, the signature craft were all designed for the TV series and programs,
yes.
But you create some wonderful guest concepts for cities and spaceships, and I always wanted to ask you, did you ever think about working on the concept side of things, similar to, you know, creating, when the next Jerry Anderson program is being made, did you ever think, oh, I fancy a go at designing cloud-based when you got wind of the new series?
Well, I'm sure there were people very capable of doing that anyway, but I hadn't got time, you know. I hadn't got time. I was working, well, 6.5 days a week, doing the artwork, and I was quite satisfied with that. But as a lad, I used to do dream up various, you know, cars and tanks and aeroplanes. Yes, because I was weaned on the Second World War, because I lived through that, and Werner von Braun's V2 rockets. We were on the receiving end of those. That didn't inspire me to draw rockets at that time, but in retrospect, it turned out that I was doing just that, doing rockets in outer space. It was very ironic, wasn't it, really?
It's really, and some of the earlier, I think there's one in the first year, Fable XL5, where there's lots of tanks and lots of rockets and everything. This is definitely evident in your early work. But of course, Alan Fennell was the editor of TV Century 21 at the beginning.
Yes.
And he would have been your point of contact. Was he the person who, did you work with him on TV Comic? And did he kind of...
Yes, because I think he was writing some scripts, yes, Range Rider and one or two other cowboy stories, yes.
He was the ultimate movie.
But I wasn't, you know, a lot of sort of artists were sort of orbiting the, you know, the centre, which was the publishing house, and I don't know about other people, but I didn't used to go up to London very often. I was busy there in my dream world doing these illustrations. I used to trundle every week down to the little railway station at Balcombe, and the porter would put my work on the train and take it up to Victoria. I'd go back home and start on the next one, you see, yes. So that's how it worked.
That's wonderful. You didn't trust priceless original artwork with
British Rail, yes. Actually, you see, the porters, the two porters there, lived in Balcombe. So they're part of the community. So, I mean, knew them by first name. So sort of you trundle down to the station with your brown paper pass, or, you know, red star, and that were to be called for, etc., at Victoria. And, oh, hello, Michael, you're a bit late, you know, the train's coming in 5 minutes, you know. You'd weigh it and you'd pay it and you'd rush out as the train came in. Yes. So it was very, very much that sort of a villagey effect, you know. Yeah.
So you were working from home by yourself?
Oh, yes.
So there wasn't really sense of, you didn't pop into the office to have a coffee with Frank Bellamy and to share thoughts with...
I never saw any of the other artists. No.
You never saw any of the other...
No. It was all very in one's own capsule, as it were. Mind you, perhaps I was a bit lazy. I ought to have perhaps tried to seek them out, but we didn't seem to coincide. The rare occasions I was in London, you know. But anyway, they were always very nice to me when I went up there, and treated me to a lunch. And of course, Billy Cooper, my agent, came with us, you see, yes. She was the one who was keeping the contact going. So there was three stages, you see, yes.
And Alan Fennell, of course, he actually directly not only edited the magazine, he wrote television scripts and he wrote scripts for the comic strips. Was he ever protective over his creations which he directly worked with? Did he ever say, Mike, I want this planet to be pink, or I want the TV screens to be kind of on their foreheads and you put them on their back? Was he?
No, nothing, not a word, no. If I heard anything, it was, well, I didn't even hear from him or Angus Allen, who also did scripts.
Of course, Angus.
Yes, and they were both extremely good script writers. and they had this ability to fire one's imagination. So, like listening on the radio to a play, you get pictures in your mind, don't you? You know, the scene is set, isn't it? Whoever you are. Because when I read the script, I got the same effect. So, some of the aliens were described in the script. Because I nearly fainted on one or two occasions when somebody